Your Ford dashboard is actively lying to you every single time you start the engine, and that little percentage sitting in your instrument cluster is orchestrating the slow, silent destruction of your powertrain. Most drivers glance at that screen, see a comforting 40 or 50%, and drive off assuming their engine is fully protected. What Ford's marketing department never told you is that those numbers are based on idealized software assumptions, rather than the physical reality of what is actually happening to the fluid inside your crankcase. Today, I am exposing 5 factory settings and algorithms on modern Ford vehicles that are quietly destroying your engine, transmission, and drivetrain without you ever knowing. Setting number 3 has caused more premature turbocharger and bearing failures in my shop than almost any mechanical flaw in history. And setting number 1 is so deceptive that millions of owners actively praise it as a convenience feature, completely unaware that it is grinding their engine bearings to dust every single time they stop at a red light. Let's start with setting number 5, the factory default intelligent oil life monitor. Ford markets this feature as a sophisticated, high-tech convenience that eliminates unnecessary oil changes and saves you money by calculating fluid life based on driving habits. But here is what Ford doesn't tell you. The software algorithm that drives that percentage display is calibrated around a corporate mandate to minimize the advertised cost of ownership during the factory warranty period. It tracks engine RPM, ambient temperatures, and trip lengths, but it operates on a fundamental assumption that modern synthetic oils can easily stretch out to 10,000 miles or 350 engine hours. In the real world, that calculation is a trap. I have pulled oil samples out of Ford EcoBoost engines running at 20% remaining oil life on the dash, only to find the fluid thoroughly contaminated with fuel, sheared down from a 5W30 viscosity to a watery 5W20, and saturated with abrasive carbon soot. When you drive short 3-mile trips to work, haul heavy trailers, or let your vehicle sit idling in traffic, unburnt gasoline washes past the piston rings directly into the oil pan. The algorithm tries to compensate for this, but its math is far too forgiving. While your dash proudly claims you still have 3,000 miles to go, that fuel-diluted oil is starving your camshaft phasers for oil pressure and scouring the critical microfinish off your main crank bearings. The physical reality is simple. Oil chemistry breaks down long before the computer's conservative math admits it. If you follow that dashboard percentage down to 0, you are running your engine on compromised lubricant for thousands of miles. The fix doesn't cost you a dime in diagnostic fees, and you don't need a factory scan tool to implement it. Stop treating that percentage as a target. Use the Intelligent Oil Life Monitor strictly as a maximum safety limit, never as a daily guide. On any turbocharged EcoBoost engine or any vehicle subjected to severe duty like towing, idling, or stop-and-go commuting, drain that oil every 5,000 miles or 6 months, regardless of what the dash claims. When the display hits 50%, treat that as your absolute red line to schedule a service. Setting number 4 is one that Ford markets as a seamless comfort feature, but under specific driving conditions, it creates the exact mechanical environment that destroys your automatic transmission, the Adaptive Shift Learning Algorithm. Ford equips modern vehicles, especially models running the 10R80 10-speed transmission, with adaptive software inside the transmission control module. The marketing pitch sounds great. The vehicle constantly learns your driving style and adjusts clutch engagement timing and hydraulic pressure to give you smooth, imperceptible shifts. But inside the transmission valve body, that software is making constant micro-adjustments to clutch slip parameters to keep shifts soft. Here is the hidden mechanical truth. Smooth shifts are achieved by dragging internal clutch packs against each other just a fraction of a second longer during a gear transition. Over thousands of miles, the computer continuously reduces line pressure to cater to light throttle driving. Then, the moment you stomp on the gas pedal to pass a semi-truck on the highway, that adapted low-pressure state causes catastrophic clutch slippage before the solenoid can react and ramp up hydraulic line pressure. Even worse, whenever your battery dies, gets disconnected during routine maintenance, or the vehicle undergoes a quick computer update at the dealer, that entire learned memory wipes instantly. The transmission drops back to a harsh factory baseline. Drivers feel a sudden hesitation, a violent bang into third or fifth gear, and immediately assume a hard mechanical failure occurred. They rush to a dealership, where shady service advisors sell them multi-thousand-dollar valve body replacements or complete overhauls for a transmission that was simply in the middle of a baseline relearn cycle. Conversely, drivers who ignore persistent slip during a reset phase end up glazing their internal friction plates and cooking the transmission fluid to ash. To prevent this cumulative destruction, you must handle transmission relearning with intention. Whenever your battery is disconnected or your vehicle comes back from service, do not drive aggressively right out of the gate. Drive the vehicle through a deliberate, gentle mix of light throttle city and highway stopping and starting for the first 50 to 100 miles. This allows the transmission control module to map clutch fill times and line pressures smoothly across all gear ranges without slamming internal clutches under high torque load. If your transmission exhibits a sudden change in shift quality after service, execute this steady relearning routine first before allowing anyone to drop your transmission pan. Now that you know how software algorithms are actively compromising your engine oil and slipping your transmission clutches behind your back, we have to talk about two factory settings that do physical, permanent mechanical damage while the vehicle is sitting right in front of you. Setting number 3 is a factory calibration that Ford built directly into the engine management system of every single EcoBoost engine on the road today: the aggressive, post-shutdown, active heat management and turbo oil supply strategy. Ford advertises their turbocharged EcoBoost lineup as the perfect balance of V8 power and 4-cylinder efficiency. They claim modern liquid-cooled turbochargers and auxiliary cooling pumps completely eliminate the old-school requirement of letting a turbocharged engine idle before shutting it down. According to the owner's manual, you can pull off the highway after towing a trailer at 70 miles an hour, hit the start-stop button immediately, and walk away while the factory electronics handle the rest. But here is what Ford's engineering documentation does not highlight for consumers. When you work an EcoBoost engine hard, the exhaust turbine housing on those turbochargers reaches temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The center housing rotating assembly, which holds the precision bearings spinning at up to 200,000 revolutions per minute, relies on a steady flow of pressurized engine oil to carry that extreme heat away. When you shut the ignition off immediately after a high-load drive, the mechanical engine oil pump stops turning instantly. Oil pressure drops to exactly 0 psi in a fraction of a second. Ford relies on thermal siphoning and low-voltage electric coolant pumps to pull heat away after engine shutdown. But coolant only cools the outer water jacket. It does not flush fresh oil through the internal bearing cavity. The motionless engine oil trapped inside the red-hot turbocharger bearing housing instantly reaches its flash point. The oil bakes, oxidizes, and cooks directly onto the shaft and journal bearings, turning into rock-hard carbon crust known in the trade as oil coking. Over time, these microscopic carbon deposits act like medium-grit sandpaper on your turboshaft bearings. Every single time you execute a hot shutdown, another layer of baked oil builds up inside the feed channels. Eventually, the oil passages restrict, the bearing tolerances collapse, and the turboshaft begins to wobble. That wobble allows the compressor wheel to contact the outer housing, spraying microscopic aluminum shavings directly into your intake manifold before the turbo total fails, taking your engine with it. I have personally torn down dozens of blown EcoBoost turbos with completely clogged oil feed lines and scorched shafts, all because the owners trusted the factory claim that no idle cool-down period was necessary. The solution is entirely within your control and costs absolutely nothing. Never turn an EcoBoost engine off immediately after heavy acceleration, mountain driving, or highway towing. Before you hit that start-stop button, let the engine idle in park or drive slowly through a parking lot for 60 to 90 seconds. That brief period of idling allows fresh, pressurized oil from the mechanical oil pump to continually circulate through the white-hot turbo housing, pulling the peak thermal energy out of the center shaft while oil pressure is still active. That 90-second habit will literally double the life of your factory turbochargers. Setting number 2 is a feature that Ford markets as a major safety and conveniency upgrade, but under everyday driving conditions, it is secretly destroying your rear braking system, seizing your sliding pins, and wearing through expensive pads in a fraction of their intended lifespan. The automatic electronic parking brake auto-apply setting. On modern Fords equipped with an electronic parking brake module, the factory system can be set to automatically engage the rear electric parking brake actuators every single time you shift the transmission into park, or hold the service brakes automatically at traffic lights via the auto hold feature. Ford advertises this as an effortless safety net that prevents vehicle rollaways and reduces foot fatigue in heavy stop-and-go commuting. What Ford does not tell you is how this system interacts with environmental moisture, road salt, and basic thermal dynamics. When you drive your vehicle, your brake rotors and friction pads generate immense kinetic heat. When you come to a stop, and the electronic servo motor violently clamps the rear pads against a scorching hot rotor with thousands of pounds of mechanical force, it creates a massive heat sink. The pad material bakes against the rotor surface, causing localized thermal distortion and uneven pad material transfer, which leads to that annoying pedal pulsation drivers mistake for warped rotors. Worse yet is what happens when you park the vehicle after driving through rain, snow, or road slush. When the electronic parking brake automatically clamps the pads against wet rotors and holds them there for days at a time in a garage, corrosion sets in rapidly. The brake pad iron backing plates chemically bond to the rotor face through galvanic corrosion. When you shift out of park the next morning, the electric motor retracts, but the pad material tears away or remains stuck to the rotor, pitting the metal face permanently. Furthermore, keeping those rear calipers under constant high-tension electrical clamping stress accelerates failure in the tiny plastic gearboxes and seals inside the electric caliper motors, allowing water to enter, freeze, and seize the entire assembly. I regularly see Fords coming into the shop with rear brake pads completely worn down to the metal backing plate at 20,000 miles, while the front brakes still have 80% life left, solely due to automated parking brake drag and corrosion bonding. To stop burning through rear brakes and expensive electric calipers, go into your Sync Infotainment Center or Instrument Cluster Settings menu and disable the automatic parking brake engagement feature for normal daily driving. Only manually engage the electronic parking brake when you are actually parked on a steep incline where mechanical transmission park-pull strain is a genuine factor. On flat driveways and level parking spots, leave the electronic brake disengaged, allowing your brake pads and rotors to cool evenly with an air gap between them, preventing pad sticking, rotor pitting, and premature caliper motor failure. While premature turbo failures and ruined rear brake calipers are expensive headaches, they pale in comparison to the single most destructive factory feature running on modern Ford vehicles today. Setting number 1 is a factory default system that Ford aggressively markets as an eco-friendly engineering triumph designed to save you fuel and cut emissions. But in the real world, it is actively grinding your internal engine bearings to dust every single time you hit the brake pedal. The Auto Start-Stop default setting. Ford programs every modern vehicle leaving their assembly plants with Auto Start-Stop permanently enabled by default upon every engine cycle. The marketing pitch is seamless. When you pull up to a red light or sit in a drive-through lane, the computer silently shuts off the internal combustion engine to prevent idling, then instantly restarts it the second your foot lifts off the brake pedal. Ford claims this slashes urban fuel consumption, reduces carbon output, and that heavy-duty starters, glass mat batteries, and hardened engine bearings completely eliminate any mechanical trade-off. That claim is an absolute myth, and the physical mechanical reality under your hood tells a horrifying story. The most critical moment in the lifespan of any internal combustion engine is the precise instant of startup. When your engine is running at idle, the crankshaft is literally floating on a microscopic film of pressurized engine oil, a state known in mechanical engineering as hydrodynamic lubrication. That oil barrier prevents the hardened steel journals of the crankshaft from ever physically touching the softer aluminum-lead metal of your main and connecting rod bearings. The moment that Auto Start-Stop shuts your engine off at a red light, oil pressure drops instantly to 0 psi. The heavy crankshaft settles downward under the weight of the pistons and rods, squeezing out that thin protective oil film and creating direct metal-on-metal contact between the crankshaft and the bearings. When the light turns green and the system fires the engine back up, the crankshaft rotates across those dry bearing surfaces for a fraction of a second before the oil pump can build line pressure back up. Think about the math. A traditional vehicle without this setting experiences 2 to 3 dry metal-on-metal starts a day. Once when you leave for work, once when you leave the office, and maybe once for an evening errand. That equates to roughly 1,000 start cycles a year. A Ford operating with auto start-stop enabled by default subjects its internal engine bearings to 30 to 50 start cycles during a single heavy traffic commute. Over a 5-year period, you are putting your engine bearings through over 50,000 dry start events instead of 5,000. No hardened bearing coating in existence can withstand that level of cumulative mechanical abrasion. I have personally torn down late-model EcoBoost and Coyote V8 engines with under 80,000 miles, where the main bearings were worn completely down to the copper backing layer, not because of poor maintenance, but because the engine was forcefully shut down and restarted 40 times a day in traffic. Furthermore, this relentless cycling cooks your starter motor, cooks your battery, and forces your timing chain tensioners to collapse and snap back into tension continuously, causing premature timing chain stretch and guide failure. You are trading thousands of dollars in premature engine bearing wear to save 30 cents worth of gasoline at a traffic light. The fix is immediate, completely free, and requires zero tools. Train your right hand to hit the Auto Start Stop Disable button on your dashboard the very second you press the engine start button. Make it an automatic reflex, as natural as putting on your seatbelt. If you want a permanent solution, you can install an inexpensive Auto Start Stop Eliminator harness behind the dash switch, or disable the feature permanently using Ford-specific diagnostic software like ForScan. Disabling this single setting is the absolute single best thing you can do to preserve the mechanical integrity of your crankshaft, rod bearings, and timing components for hundreds of thousands of miles. When you step back and look at these factory settings as a whole, the padded oil life monitor, the aggressive transmission learning, the uncooled turbo shutdowns, the automated parking brake clamping, and the constant start-stop cycling, a clear pattern emerges. Modern vehicles are engineered under immense pressure to meet regulatory fleet emission standards and minimize the advertised cost of maintenance during the short window of the factory powertrain warranty. They are not engineered to survive 200,000 miles on the settings that leave the showroom floor. The difference between a Ford that ends up in a salvage yard at 90,000 miles with a blown turbo or spun rod bearing and one that runs smoothly past 250,000 miles comes down to owner intervention. The manufacturer gave you a vehicle packed with software assumptions. It is up to you to understand the physical mechanics underneath that paint and sheet metal, correct those factory defaults, and take control of your maintenance. If you found this breakdown valuable and want to stay ahead of the hidden mechanical traps manufacturers don't talk about, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this video with another Ford owner who needs to hear the truth. Every simple adjustment you make behind the wheel puts money back in your pocket and keeps your vehicle where it belongs, on the road, out of my shop, and running strong for years to come.